All right, home affordability, big topic. Whose fault is it? Probably Biden's or Trump's or, one of those people. Somebody screwed something up and housing is no longer affordable, right? That's what I hear every day. That's too expensive. I can't afford that. If I qualify you for the loan, you can't afford it. Straight up. I don't know how else to say it. So here we are end of May 2024, and housing is just unaffordable, right? It's too expensive. No one can afford anything, where everyone is looking for tiny ass houses, or apparently the whole living in a van down by a river used to be a bad thing when I was a kid. Now that's like the fucking dream. Everybody wants to go live in a van down by the river and live off grid because it's cheaper.
You'll have plenty of time to live in a van down by the river when you're living in a van down by the river.
And yes, that is an option. You can absolutely do that. I'm here for those that are interested in home ownership, that want to live in an actual house without wheels that you can't drive somewhere. And yes, it is expensive right now. I'm aware of that. Homes are more expensive. The other meme that I see a lot is, oh, the biggest mistake I ever made was I was, in third grade during the housing crash, so I couldn't buy cheap real estate. Guess what? It's cheap right now compared to where it will be 10 to 20 years from now. Keep that in mind. Housing pretty much always increases. I've made so many other videos on how this works. There is not a housing crash coming ever, as far as I'm concerned. There's no data points currently that point to that. Get that out of your head. Rates are probably gonna stay where they're at for a while. You have basically two options. You can keep complaining about it and just think that the world's against you and that everyone's out to get you and you can't have nice things because somebody screwed something else up. Or you can take some personal responsibility and start to find solutions that actually work, even though they may not be ideal. Let me tell you the story when I bought my very first house. I was 23 years old. I was working as a lead teller. I got a promotion at the bank, making 12 bucks an hour. Big money, right? And I wanted to buy a house because I was paying $500 a month to rent a room in some dude's house. And I did the math and I was like, wait a minute, if I'm paying $500 for this room and the other guy's paying $500 for that room, and wait a minute, this guy's making $1,500 off all of us just living here in his house. I wonder how much his mortgage is. And because I worked at the bank, I decided to go meet with the mortgage lender and have that discussion. And he told me that I could qualify for a grand total of $150K. That was how much I could afford. Even back then, there were not many homes at that price point, especially in the city where I was working. I was, right in, downtown Mesa, working at Apache Junction. Even out there weren't homes at that time at that price. I could have lived in like a really old, shitty condo, but it had a really high HOA fee and it was really small and I wouldn't have been able to rent out the rooms the way that I had planned to. So I didn't like that idea. So what I decided to do was just drive a little bit further. My real estate agent at the time showed me about this new development in this part of Arizona that no one had ever heard of at the time called Queen Creek. No one knew what it was. And then eventually it turned into Santan Valley. So I bought out there before it exploded and went nuts, which ended up really being awesome for when I decided to sell the house. Because yeah, when I bought it, it was expensive. I went from $500 a month to I think it was $1,300 for the mortgage. That's more than double. It freaked me out. It seemed very unaffordable to me at the time. And I'm sure you're all laughing at that price. We would all love a $1,300 mortgage right now, right? It's the same concept. At that time in my life, it was crazy expensive. And I could have just complained and said, oh, well, that's bullshit. There's no way I'm gonna pay that. I'll just keep paying this, $500 a month and blah, blah, blah. I thought a few years ahead into the future. And even when I actually bought as home prices were still coming down. They hadn't bottomed out yet. All my friends and even some of my family were like, dude, it is the worst time to buy a house right now. Like the market just crashed. You should not be doing this. And I was like, well, I understand it's crashed, but eventually it's gonna get back up there and I need a place to live anyway. Long story short, I pulled the trigger. That house, when I decided to finally sell it, again, it took me 10 years. I'd lived there for 10 years. I actually started a family in that house. Didn't get to have my roommates and create some wealth like I had originally planned because I met my wife, but it all worked out. It was a happy mistake. It was a good one. That came along with 2 more happy mistakes that are running around this house somewhere. Look at your options. So I want to show you some really cool things if you are willing to drive a little bit further to get a more inexpensive home, because there are homes available today all over in California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, that are in kind of more rural locations, that are kind of out in the boonies, right? Maybe the small towns. But if you're willing to either take a longer commute, or maybe you work from home and you're a virtual worker anyway, I don't know what your people's excuses are. Like, if you can work from anywhere, why would you want to stay broke and keep living in a city and renting? Go a little further out, buy a house, start earning equity, and then when you're ready, sell that sucker and buy a more awesome house. That's how it works. I want to show a tactic. So I want to show you this really cool thing called the USDA loan. So let's bust out the laptop. All right, so here is official USDA eligibility map. This guy right here will show you all of the USDA eligible areas, which means anything eligible does not require a down payment, or you can do the zero down USDA loan. And it'll surprise you, like I'm zoomed out pretty far right here, but the ineligible area is this peaches, or whatever hell that color is. So if you go in here, you can see the only thing, like all of Phoenix, the bigger cities and Tucson are not going to qualify for the USDA. But anything around that area, and you might be surprised, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit in here. Like there's little pockets sometimes where there's eligible. Because again, if it's not in this color, so if there's a house chilling right down the road here, right outside Sun Lakes, that could qualify for zero down. There's also little pockets in Santan Valley. I mean, there's tons of little places depending on where you're wanting to live. And if you have a specific property in mind, you can just type it in here. Here, we'll give you a real example. Please don't kill my grandmother. This is the home I grew up in. You could not rob her. That would be great. Well, there it is. It shows right there that her house is in an eligible location. So it'll straight up tell you. If you have a specific address, it will tell you right then and there if it's in an eligible area. That was the USDA map. That shows all of the eligible properties in any state. You can literally plug in any address like I showed you and run to see if it's eligible for USDA. If it is, that means it's zero down. It's a zero down loan. And there's even programs that use down payment assistance with the USDA loan, so we don't have to ask the seller for closing costs because the program will give you money for the closing costs and it's already a zero down program. So I'm just saying home affordability is not dead. You're just not willing to put in the extra work or sometimes do the harder things that not everyone else is willing to do because it's easier to stay broke. It's easier to complain and play the victim card and that the world's out to get us and that everything's unaffordable. Or you can stop what you're doing and take action and realize that there are options for you. Whatever your excuse is, if your credit sucks, I can fix it. You don't have any money, we got down payment assistance. If homeownership is a real dream for you and you know that you need to do it, let's start today. Go to my website. There's an inquiry form you can fill out. We'll spend 5 to 10 minutes on your situation. And I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you if I think it's a good time for you to buy right now or if you need a little bit more time. So check it out today and let's make homeownership happen for you because I promise you it is affordable if you're willing to make some sacrifices in the first few years for some long-term wealth.